I want to start today with a question that might feel a little confronting. What are you holding in your body that you haven't let yourself feel yet? Because in my experience with the ladies I work with and in the emerging science of psychoneuroimmunology and somatic therapy, there is a direct relationship between unprocessed emotional experience and the way the body holds weight. And today I want to explore that with you. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk wrote a book called The Body Holds the Score. It has sold millions of copies because it articulates something that many people have sensed but didn't have the language for, and that's that the body holds our history. Unprocessed experiences, stress, loss, trauma and grief, they don't disappear. They live in the tissue, in the posture, in the chronic tension, in the way we hold our breath. This is not mystical, this is physiology. When we experience something overwhelming or when we experience chronic low-grade stress over a long period of time and we don't have the resources to fully process it, the nervous system stores it as an unresolved threat. And that unresolved threat maintains a state of physiological alertness. The body then stays in a mild state of emergency, and in that state, as we've discussed, it holds on. Menopause is often the moment when this stored material surfaces, because the hormonal shift changes the capacity to suppress and to push through. Things that we've managed to outrun for decades suddenly catch up with us again. And this can feel like we're falling apart. But it's actually the body saying, now is the time. I want to describe some of the patterns that I see consistently with the women that I work with day to day. And I want you to notice if any of these feel familiar to you. The first is what I call protective weight. This is when we have the weight in our body that's been unconsciously accumulated over time as a form of an armor. It can be connected to experiences of not feeling safe, unsafe in relationships, in the world, or even in your own skin. The body, in its wisdom, creates a physical buffer. This isn't a conscious choice. It operates entirely below the level of awareness. The second is grief weight, grief that hasn't been fully mourned. The loss of a relationship, of a person, of a version of yourself, of a life that didn't go the way you'd hoped. This sits in the body as heaviness, literally. Women in long-term unresolved grief often describe this feeling as a physical sensation of weight that no diet ever addresses. The third is resentment and the weight of chronic overgiving. When we constantly give more than we receive in relationships, in work, in family life, without acknowledgement or reciprocity, resentment accumulates. And resentment held chronically in the body creates physiological inflammation. Inflammation directly drives weight gain in insulin resistance. This is not a metaphor, this is a mechanism. And fourth, and this one is particularly relevant in the menopause years, is identity grief. The loss of who you once were, the woman that you feel you were when you were younger, the body that moved differently, the body that responded differently, the body that maybe you took for granted. Grieving that is legitimate and is important. And ungrieved, it becomes another layer of stored heaviness. I know this might feel like we're deviating away from the topic of weight loss, but we haven't. We've actually gone deeper into it. Here's the direct link. Unresolved emotional experience maintains elevated cortisol and inflammatory markers. Both of these directly impede fat metabolism, particularly around the abdomen. They also drive the behaviors that we label as emotional eating, which is actually a brilliant adaptive coping strategy that the body puts in place for the nervous system dysregulation. When the emotional system is overwhelmed, the body reaches for anything that can provide a quick hit of soothing, usually fatty or sugary, something that reminds us of childhood often comfort food. Now, this isn't weakness, this is the nervous system trying to regulate. It's using any tools that it has available. The implications of this, though, are significant. If you want to change your relationship with food, you often first need to address what the food is actually doing for you. On an emotional level, what need is the food meeting? What feeling is it managing? And what conversation is it helping you avoid? These aren't comfortable questions, but they're questions that create lasting change. Because when the underlying need is met in a different way or is removed altogether, when the nervous system finds new routines and new ways to regulate, the compulsive reaching out for food naturally and easily reduces. And not through restriction either, through resolution. Often, deep emotional processing can benefit from professional support. Of course, a therapist, some sort of somatic practitioner, or a coach who works in this area. I'm not suggesting by any means that you do this alone, but this material is very significant. There are some things that you can begin to do. Easy, accessible, gentle practices that start to create a space for what's held within. The first is journaling, but not the gratitude list kind of journaling, the honest kind, the what am I actually feeling right now kind of journaling. What has my week been like? What's it brought up for me? Even 5 minutes of uncensored writing can begin to move what's actually been stuck for you. The second is body-based awareness. Simply checking in with yourself. Where am I holding tension right now? What am I feeling in my body? Do I feel any constriction anywhere? This isn't about fixing anything, it's just about becoming present, noticing and aware. The beginning of noticing is where we start to make the change. And the third is grief work. This can be as simple as allowing yourself to cry. Many women in menopause, I often hear them describe that they have a complete inability to cry. Years of being strong, of managing, of suppressing, of pushing through. If you can find a safe space, or even a trusted friend, a therapist, or a private walk, anywhere you feel safe, if you feel like there's a release there, allow that to happen rather than continuing to carry it. And fourth is self-inquiry. Asking yourself, what is the story that I'm living from? What do I believe about myself that I've never actually questioned and may not actually be true? And what would be possible if that story wasn't true and I was living from a place of that not being true? You are not just a body to be managed. You're a human being with a history, with accumulated experiences, with a nervous system that has adapted to everything that you've been through, everything life's thrown at you and everything you've coped with. And the most profound weight loss stories that I've witnessed begin not with a diet, but with one question. What am I ready to let go of? Not just the weight on the scales, but what else? Sit with that thought this week and come back next week, because we're going to talk about what becomes possible when you do. I'll see you then.